Let me tell you where we are in the story that is unfolding in Torah. Last time we met was the moment of the death of Sarah. And soon after Sarah's death, Abraham dies. And their son, Isaac, met his bride, Rebekah. When we open the Torah portion that follows is the birth of the twins that Isaac and Rebekah have together, Esau and Jacob. Now those twins, we hear from the Torah, they wrestled together, even in the womb, to know which of them would come out first. Sibling rivalry, right? It starts right at conception. But it matters in our tradition because the firstborn son is the one who will get the blessing, who will get the inheritance, is the one who will be the leader, continue to be the leader of the tribe. And so it really did matter, in fact, in the unfolding of the story. And Esau is the one who comes out first. Yaakov, Jacob, is the one who follows. The story goes that he grabbed onto his brother's heel, and that's how he was pulled out of the womb. Yaakov, actually, his name means, is connected to the word for heel. Ekev, Yaakov, Ekev is the word for heel. But it also has a connotation which will haunt Jacob all his life of the one who never made it first. The one who followed, the one who always came second. And I gave that talk last year, but I'm always reminded of what a terrible job Isaac and Rebekah did naming their son second. What do you call it? The second. No. The second best, right? All his life he's going to fight to erase his name until eventually next week's Torah portion, God finally gives him a different name, Yisrael. You have to be careful the words you use around your children. Not just the names you gave them, but the nicknames you gave them. And I'm sorry if anybody is named Jacob. It's not about you. It's about that character in the Torah. But Jacob and Esau didn't stop their wrestling after they were born. The wrestling continues. And in the moment where Isaac's eyes dim and he's about to die, there's this big fight that happens between them, and Jacob manages not only to steal from his brother his birthright, he also disguises himself as his brother and steal from his almost blind father, the blessing of his older brother. So with having stolen the birthright and the blessing, Jacob is now the head of the tribe. You can imagine how Esau took it. In the moment that this actually happens, Esau understands that his brother tricked his father into giving him the blessing, and he vows there and then to kill Jacob for what is done. And Jacob has to flee. His mother, Rebekah, actually helped him steal the blessing from his father. And so Rebekah tells Jacob to go and go back to her family of origin and find a wife there. That's where he's on his way when we meet him as we open this week's Torah portion. He's fleeing from Beersheba, he's fleeing from his family camp, escaping the wrath of his brother, trying to save his own skin. And as the Torah says, he flees pretty late in the day after all the things that have happened, and so he finds himself in a place where he has to stop to spend the night. And the Torah says, Vayivga b'makom vayalen sham, which gets usually translated as, actually I have it here, he encountered the place and he spent the night there. It's interesting, the word encounter, because that's not the only way you can read this very powerful verse. I'm going to let you know right now, I'm going to invite you into a deep dive into Jewish mysticism right now. We're going to be Kabbalists for a few minutes. Because the Kabbalists read this verse very differently. They look at this first word, Vayivga b'makom, and they said, you could read it like this, with this set of vowels, because the vowels were added 1,000 years after the Torah was compiled, even more than that, 1,500 years. Or you can put different vowels and read it differently. And if you put different vowels, then suddenly the word is not Vayivga, but Vayipaga b'makom. And if you read Vayipaga b'makom, then the way the Kabbalists read it is that Jacob was, actually Vayipaga means was hit, was physically hit by Hamakom, by the place. Now you have to understand that the word the place, Hamakom, is another name of God. One of the names of God is the place, which makes sense for the Kabbalists because every place is the place where God manifests. So did Jacob encounter the place, or the Kabbalists in the Kabbalistic reading, was God hit by the place, by God? And if he was hit by God, what was that about? And the next verse is that Jacob fell asleep. And he had a dream, supposedly. He had a vision. And in this vision is the famous vision of the ladder, the sulam, the ladder that Jacob sees, where he says, and I'm quoting, the ladder was set toward the ground, and its head reached toward heaven. That's very interesting. That's also the mystical reading, by the way. But it's very close. It's actually connected to the Hebrew, obviously. It doesn't say that the ladder was touching the ground, and it doesn't say that the ladder was touching heaven, but it was set toward the ground, and it was reaching toward heaven as well. So this in-between place that the ladder represents. And behold, angels of God were ascending and descending on it. Now the Kabbalists love that metaphor, they love that image. For them, it's not, the word sulam, which gets translated as ladder, is not exactly the only translation that is possible. For the Kabbalists, the word sulam, from the root salal, means ascending. Right? It's an ascending, it's a vision of ascending. Right? Whether there is actually a ladder or not is really for the Kabbalists not the problem. What they are going to superimpose on that image is not a ladder where you can climb to your roof, but the Kabbalistic tree of life. That for them is the ladder that we are talking about. That is the ladder that, the angels of God are rising up and down from and to. Right? And I'm doing this because the Kabbalistic tree of life is not rungs, but the Kabbalistic tree of life meanders all the way up. Some people call it the lightning flash, and the lightning flash touches down and rises up. And so there's this sense of the lightning flash of the angels, and I'm going to talk about that word in a moment, coming down and then rising up, just like a lightning flash does. Right? So now we're not in Kansas anymore. Now we're looking at this verse and we are thinking, okay, what then is this talking about? And that's when I'm going to talk about malachim. Malache Elohim, the angels of God, usually translated as the angels of God. I don't know where we got this angels thing. I'm going to venture to say, in biblical times, at the time these stories were compiled, the vision that we have of the little cherub on the Hallmark cards was not what our ancestors had in mind when they talked about malachim. I think far from it. There's nothing in Scripture that would lead us to believe that we would have these beings with wings and all of that. They are talking about something completely different. They are talking about energy. And the reason they're talking about energy is because they base that on the word itself, malachim. So let's do a little Kabbalistic explanation of the word malachim. Malachim, which gets translated as angel, is the same word that we find used in the story of creation in Genesis 1. God, the first day, the second day, the third day, God said, "Let there be light." You know that story. We all know that story. And then at the end of this of the creation, it says that God rested from all that God had created. And the word that is used for that is God rested from all the melacha that God did. The melacha is God's creative power. That's the melacha. Now, melacha is the same word or the same root that gives us the word malachim. Melacha, malachim, melacha, malachim. You see that they're the same words. So if you think that malachim means angels, then the way that God creates, God angels. So if we think about it this way, and we don't have little cherubs flying around, the way that God manifests God's self as creation is through energies that are flowing from nothingness and become somethingness, which is exactly what the Kabbalistic tree of life is pointing us to, is describing. That from nothingness, somethingness, something emerges. Out of nothingness, this becomes, this exists. And the way that happens is that God malachs, God angels God's self into this creation. God transforms God's self into energy, into what the Kabbalists called light, because they didn't have a word for energy, so they're going to call it light, right? This an entire universe, this whole created manifest universe is vibrations, is energy, is the divine light expressing itself as everything. So what happens is that each rung of the ladder or each rung, let's say in Kabbalah they call it Sephirah, of the Kabbalistic tree of life is away from this massive energy that is birthed out of the divine to be tempered down and slowed down enough that by the time it reaches the bottom of the ladder, it's slow enough that it gives us matter. Or at least a certain energy field that through our modalities of perception we fathom as things and people and objects and floors and ceilings and light. Okay? So the ladder with the energy descending and then energy ascending means that just like for the Kabbalistic tree of life, this is a two-way happening. Descending is the path of creation and manifestation. And ascending is a path of destruction and a path of transcendence, right? Of reconnecting with Source. What the image is telling us, both in the ladder of Jacob and in the Kabbalistic tree of life, which are obviously the one and the same, is that the descending energies and the arising energies happen quasi-simultaneously. We may have this idea when we think about the angel descending the ladder that there are little things that take their time. one rung, and then the next rung, and then lower down, and then they come up, and it's a little, like in Donkey Kong when we used to play that growing up. Tick, 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 tick. It takes time. But that's not what the image is that it almost happens simultaneously. As soon as the energies are manifesting and expressing, they also are brought back to their source, to their origin. Now I'm going to say one more thing about that. I hope I haven't lost everybody, maybe just, 3/4. But the ladder, we have this sense, or the tree of life, we have a sense that it's happening vertically. That the energies are descending and then ascending and then descending and then ascending. But I'm going to take that, I'm going to flatten it. See, I'm taking the ladder and I'm putting it this way. Because the way it's actually happening towards us and then away from us. So the energy is coming out and manifesting and then is dying. Manifesting, being destroyed. Manifesting, being destroyed. Manifesting, being destroyed. And it's happening so fast. It's happening so fast that we cannot perceive it as happening. So we have this illusion of continuity in our human experience where in fact everything is actually blinking in and out of existence moment to moment. You see what I'm trying to say? Everything is always changing, dying and being born, manifesting and being destroyed. Immanence and transcendence. And it's happening like this. It's like on the screen. So you have little dots of light that are coming in and out, 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 in and out. The example that I like to give is electricity and light bulbs. So we use light bulbs that come from electricity, but electricity, we use AC, right? Alternate current. If we could see it, and in theory, the light bulb, that as we are looking at it, actually goes in and out, in and out, in and out. But it's happening so fast that our eyes and our mind and our brains are unable to see, would be unable to see that in fact that's what's happening. Because we only have so many frames per second, right? It's like the, we used to have actually films for movies. Now it's all digital, but it's the same kind of thing, right? It's actually a frame, but it goes so fast that we have this impression of continuity. This moment, we have an impression of continuity, but in fact, it's blinking in and out of existence moment to moment. And everything actually is changing moment to moment. Like your body is not the same body that it was just a second ago. Because cells have died, others have been born, everything is coming in and out of existence moment to moment. So I equate, it's going to be a weird analogy, but I equate Jacob's experience, Jacob's vision. By the way, that story didn't happen to somebody named Jacob. That story happened to whomever wrote that. See, my sense is that those who wrote the Torah inserted in many places the stories to tell of their awakening experiences. Somebody lived through that vision and told the story to explain how that vision worked because they were enlightened beings. And they understood that this actually, if you step into meditation, those are experiences that are not far-fetched to actually have. And I don't mean to brag, but this is one of those experiences that actually, through my meditation practice, I was blessed to be able to understand and see and have that vision. So I know what they're talking about because I lived it and I got it. And it's amazing. And to explain it in a different way, I'm going to use a very bad analogy, as I started to say. I'm going to use the analogy of Neo at the end of the movie The Matrix, when he awakens, after he dies or whatever that is, and he sees the ones and zeros that are actually at the source of everything that is experienced. Now, I don't know if many of you have seen that movie, but I've mentioned it so many times over the years that I'm hoping that by now you would have rented the video and watched it. what this image is trying to say is that this reality of ours, just like the ladder and the matrix, this reality of ours is actually made up of ones and zeros, or lights blinking in and out of existence. And they are bunched up together in certain ways that what our eyes and brains translate that and recreate images based on that. I'm going to say it a different way, because I'm French. And one of my favorite paintings, actually growing up and to this day, is pointillism. Okay, pointillism is a kind of painting of enlightened masters. Because all you actually are seeing are little dots. If you get close enough to the painting, all there is on this painting is little dots. Okay, that's the experience of the ladder. That's the experience of Neo in the movie The Matrix. When you get close enough, you understand that reality is actually just dots. But then you move far from it, and what the brain does, it bunches up the colors and the dots in a certain way and makes believe that in fact there are peoples and shapes and dogs and grass and trees. Do you see what I'm trying to say here? That's the vision of Jacob. That's the Kabbalistic true of life. That's an explanation of reality actually at the subtle level of consciousness. At the subtle level of consciousness, this world is pointillism. But we can't see it because we are far enough that our minds actually create shapes out of it. And we believe the shapes are real. But if we could get close enough, we would see that it's just dots. So it's hard for us unless we get into weeks long of meditation practices to have those kind of experience. But they are not hard to have. It's very close. It's just a matter of practice. In the meantime, though, our sages, Reb Nachman of Bratslav, who knew what Jacob's vision was about, who hadn't seen The Matrix because he lived in the 1700s, but he saw it a different way, used a verse from Psalm to remind himself of what actually he was looking at moment to moment. And that verse from Psalm is on page 29, if I remember correctly, of your prayer book at the bottom, and it's Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid. It's a verse from Psalm that says, everything that I look at is Yud He Vav He, is the transcendent one manifesting as little dots, blinking in and out of existence. And moment to moment, he would repeat that mantra. Reb Nachman would repeat that mantra day in and day out, wherever he went. Whomever he looked at, whatever he looked at, for him it was Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid. In this moment, in the presence, what I am aware of, what is in front of me, is the presence of the one, is the one manifesting. So keep your dots together. You're looking great.